Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're decoding the sweeping economic and technological interventions Japan literally just enacted on July 1, 2026, to combat a massive tourism crisis. Now, if you follow global travel at all, you know Japan is a premier destination. But today marks a monumental shift in how they actually manage human movement. So let's kick things off with a really fascinating question. Is Japan officially too popular? I want you to just consider what happens when a country's economic revitalization strategy succeeds far, far beyond its physical capacity to actually handle it. What do you do when your own success threatens the very culture people are traveling across the world to see? To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this, think about this number: $42 million. By the end of 2025, a historic depreciation of the Japanese yen fueled a record-breaking influx of 42 million overseas visitors. Almost overnight, Japan became one of the most affordable, high-income destinations on the planet, and it pushed the nation's infrastructure to the absolute brink. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover Japan's over-tourism breaking point, the national price tag, local control and dual pricing, the premium barrier paradox, and finally, a new global blueprint. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Japan's over-tourism breaking point. To really grasp why the severe July 2026 fiscal interventions just dropped, we've got to look at this concept first: kankou kogai. It translates to tourism pollution, and it perfectly describes the phenomenon where unmanaged visitor volume actively degrades local infrastructure, the environment, and basically the everyday civic quality of life. It's the exact reason the social contract between residents and visitors really began to rupture. So what does kankou kogai actually look like on the ground? Well, we saw severe friction all along Japan's heavily trafficked Golden Route. In Kyoto, local buses that were designed for an aging population were totally paralyzed, just packed to the brim with tourist luggage. Japanese school trips were literally being shut out of their own national temples. Down in Gyeon, paparazzi-like harassment of traditional geisha led to super strict bans on non-residents even entering private residential alleyways. And up on Mount Fuji, this crazy, dangerous surge in overnight bullet climbers caused massive safety hazards. Moving right along to Section 2, the national price tag. Faced with all this physical chaos, the federal government responded using what economists call Pigouvian taxation, basically levying specific fees to correct negative externalities. Effective today, we're seeing a staggering financial overhaul. The departure tax has tripled to 3,000 yen. Single-entry visitor visa fees quintupled to 15,000 yen. Mount Fuji now mandates a 4,000 yen trail fee, and Kyoto's luxury accommodation tax skyrocketed to a max of 10,000 yen per night. Notice how these are acting as geopolitical barriers? They're filtering out short-term volume from places like mainland China while explicitly exempting and subsidizing Indian nationals. And this overhaul? It definitely extends to retail too. Starting in November 2026, Japan is fundamentally altering its tax-free shopping. They're completely closing that instant discount loophole at the register and moving to a European-style airport refund model. So shoppers will pay the full tax-inclusive price up front, process a digital refund claim at customs to prove the goods are actually leaving the country, and then receive the refund later via card or bank transfer. It's a super aggressive move to combat domestic tax fraud by unauthorized resellers. Now here's where it gets really clever. Talk about a brilliant wealth transfer. The newly tripled departure tax, which locals affectionately call the sayonara tax, is universally applied, but Japan is cross-subsidizing this through digital transformation. The revenue they extract from tourists directly funds drastically cheaper passports for domestic youth. A Japanese teenager now pays 57% less for their passport. The state is literally using tourist capital to foster global exchange for its own younger generation. All of this leads us to a seriously massive number: 138.3 billion yen. That is the monumental 2026 budget allocated to the Japan Tourism Agency. It's funded largely by that newly tripled departure tax, and it's legally ring-fenced specifically for over-tourism countermeasures. So how exactly do you spend 138 billion yen? You build a sophisticated, tech-driven dispersal dragnet. The federal government is funding vast networks of artificial intelligence crowd detection cameras, intelligent waste management bins that actually signal when they're full, and integrated park and ride shuttle schemes. They're using this massive pile of capital to forcefully redirect tourists away from saturated urban cores and out into rural peripheries. All right, Section 3, local control and dual pricing. Taking it down to the local level, municipal and prefectural governments are wielding unprecedented autonomy to take back their civic spaces. Notice how highly engineered the bottlenecks are on Mount Fuji's Yoshida Trail today. To totally eradicate that dangerous bullet climbing, you now have to pre-register on a smartphone app and pay a mandatory 4,000 yen fee. And more importantly, physical access gates have been erected right on the trails, and they are securely locked between 2 p.m. and 3 a.m. No prepaid mountain hut reservation, there's no way you're getting past. We're also seeing the rapid normalization of dual pricing. Take the pristine 17th century Himeji Castle, for instance. Tourist admission recently more than doubled to 2,500 yen. Meanwhile, local Himeji residents pay a deeply discounted rate of just 1,000 yen. This generates crucial maintenance capital without burdening local taxpayers. And interestingly enough, management reports that the vast majority of complaints actually come from domestic Japanese out-of-town visitors, who argue they really shouldn't have to pay tourist rates for a nationally subsidized treasure. Over in Kyoto, they pulled off something brilliant. They engineered consensus for the highest accommodation tax in the nation, up to 10,000 yen per night for luxury stays. And they did it through radical transparency. The municipal government explicitly earmarked these funds for highly visible everyday citizen pain points. So the tourist tax precisely funds new sightseeing limited express buses to keep tourists off local commuter routes. It subsidizes safety platform gates on the subway, and it pays for the massive security costs of the ancient Gion Matsuri festival. You know exactly where your money is going. Which brings us to Section 4, the premium barrier paradox. Now, while this whole macroeconomic experiment perfectly filters for high-yield tourists, it creates this fascinating economic friction. Tour company owner Avi Lugasi puts it perfectly. He says, anyone willing to pay that sort of money for a hotel is not likely to change their mind because of an extra 10,000 yen. And that brilliantly illustrates how the luxury and ultra-high net worth sectors are completely insulated from these fiscal deterrents. The premium barrier suppresses budget travelers, but it's basically rolling out the red carpet for the affluent. But here is where things get really complicated. This builds into a stark demographic paradox. The hospitality sector desperately relies on immigrant labor to sustain its massive operations. Yet, under new strict political protocols aimed at achieving zero illegal foreign residents, longtime foreign entrepreneurs are suddenly facing severe hurdles. For example, Manish Kumar, an Indian restaurant owner who has been operating legally in Japan for 3 decades, recently had his visa renewal rejected under the new screening and faced sudden deportation. So the paradox is clear. The state is demanding massive high-yield inbound tourism volume while simultaneously tightening the regulatory environment for the exact workers needed to sustain it. Finally, Section 5, a new global blueprint. When you zoom out and look at Japan's highly synchronized 2026 policies against other global over-tourism hotspots, a really clear contrast emerges. On one side, we see the European approach of blunt force, relying on punitive physical bans and the active dismantling of hospitality infrastructure. Contrasted on the other side with the new Japanese model of frictionless extraction, utilizing elegantly embedded, invisible taxes and automated technological dispersion to manage the flow without completely halting it. To be specific about what's happening over in Europe right now, Venice has implemented day tripper fees and literally banned tourist groups larger than 25 people. In Barcelona, frustrated citizens have protested by actually spraying tourists with water pistols, while the city government mandated the unprecedented revocation of all short-term Airbnb rental permits by 2028. Amsterdam, they've pushed a punishing 21% value-added tax to deter overnight stays. It is a deeply punitive and honestly often hostile, restrictive environment. And that right there highlights the Japanese distinction. Japan is proving that a mature, advanced economy can manage massive international growth without completely dismantling its hospitality sector. By burying the 3,000 yen departure tax into airline tickets, leveraging AI cameras, and transparently funding local subway gates with luxury hotel taxes, Japan ensures that every single visitor explicitly and unavoidably finances the preservation of the civic dignity they traveled all the way there to experience. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on today. As global travel continues to rebound and expand, pushing destinations to their absolute physical and cultural limits, this premium barrier might just become the new worldwide standard. So as a traveler, I have to ask you, are you willing to pay the premium to save the places you love?